We're here at the ICD talking with Viorel Isticioaia-Budura. I'm sorry if I butchered the pronunciation of your name there. And you just participated in our panel discussion upstairs. I just have a quick question for you to start off. Do you think that the current Chinese government is capable of executing another Tiananmen Square massacre? And if that were to happen or something comparable, how would and should the West respond?
Well, I'm not sure I have the whole answer to that very meaningful question. But I guess, first of all, the society itself, it's not capable to produce such a new event. Because such a new event, in a certain way, it's being produced every day. You won't believe. I will just selectively remember certain things which happened before the actual event in Tiananmen. It was the debate about democracy, which was mentioned yesterday in an intervention, in an address. And I would say that goes on now. To the same extent, I remember how many people at that time joined in that discussion about how should China look, the new society, democracy, and trying to overcome the pains which were produced by the 10 years of turmoils. Yeah? And there were people from the party activists themselves, because they were feeling to a certain extent that the party was responsible for what happened, but should come with a new thinking about how, in a forward-looking manner, should answer to the expectations of the people. Secondly, the society in certain segments, which started already at that time, late 80s, to produce new factors of change. The business community, which became stronger, bigger, better connected to the outside world. And lastly, not in that order necessarily, because the ferment, the catalyst was there, the intellectual world representing China, meaning from teachers, professors, university professors, researchers, and including the younger generation, the young pupils in the schools, in the colleges, in the universities. All these segments are still discussing about how China should cope with its own problems and how to look into the future. Then if you want, the debate, which was the core, which started the events. At that time, I was driving one morning with my wife to go. We were near to Beijing Hotel, and after a good cup of coffee, we were willing to go to Tiananmen. It was a wonderful sunny morning, early spring. And we were thinking about going and see how the people celebrate Qimingjie and the Bright Festival. And we saw somewhere on an electronic board on the left side, vis-a-vis Beijing Hotel, not anymore there, that electronic board, Xinhua News reporting about a hunger strike started by a few students in Tiananmen. And then, since I was press attaché at the time, I was thinking, let's have a look and let's see what is going on. And we drive to Tiananmen. We stopped somewhere close to the parliament, and then we went to talk to the students. And they told us that they are worried about certain things. And they said, look, we would like to have a fresher look on our past, present, and future. It started so. Then it grew bigger to what it happened to be a big challenge for everyone, from the leaders to the peoples in the streets. Then I would say that this kind of debate now, for a fresher look, goes everywhere. If you read articles published in the last 3 years, in one of the very interesting and seldomly read publication of the Chinese Communist Party, which is called, meaningful, Study Times. I'm not translating, that's the title, in English. The paper, it's in Chinese, it's Zhoukan, it's a weekly, and is debating about the mistakes, the achievements, and about challenges. But then every day, you've heard one Chinese mentioning just hours ago as a response to Madame Lao, that in certain places, in cafeterias, in universities, in restaurants, the people are still talking about their worries. They are really worries. And they are not arrested for that. Only some of them. Why? I don't have an explanation. Why only some people, human rights defenders, are seen as challenging the public and security order? Why some of them are considered threats? But the majority is there. They cannot arrest all. And they know that that would not help. Yeah, I would not adventure myself in explaining certain cases. I would say that in my position now, we are following very close and trying to understand what's going on. In many aspects, the measures are tightened, And in parallel, the legal system, as again, Honorable Madame Lao spoke about that, the number of lawyers trying to service the people interested in defending their rights keep increasing. I'm much more, according to my informations, that Madame Lau mentioned. But I'm not trying to compare that. I'm trying to see the picture. And because of that something I've mentioned in my intervention, I feel that we are some days we are judging what's going on in China with the yesterday picture, with the picture of the Tiananmen, the awful one, which shocked the world. And not only. I've been there. I just left the square hours before the tanks rolled in. And I was listening from the embassy, the whole huge noise of China living through a tragedy, through a bloody tragedy. And the little soldier, which was standing as guard at the gates of the embassy, was looking at me. And since I was speaking Chinese, and he knew me that I was a diplomat in the Romanian embassy, he asked me, what's going there? You've been there? He's standing guard for hours, and he didn't know what's going on. I said, it's your generation trying to answer some new answers. But I said, as I hear they are answering with bullets. I said, that's not the right answer, for sure.
No, absolutely.
But now, people have new answers, and have the chance to choose the right ones. It's again up to the younger ones. The ones who now have better choices, they are more internationally minded, they can access internet to a bigger extent than before, they can go abroad to study, and that was mentioned, and it's another chance. And to a certain extent, there is something new. You've heard the discussions about Confucianism. They have a chance to better understand their own society. From this point of view, when you read the whole doctrine of the Chinese Communist Party, how communist it is, ask me. I'm coming from a former communist country. If you read the status of the party book, it was reviewed just to allow the new active, responsible, engaged segment of the society to get into the party, to get into the machinery that was making decisions. Otherwise, the party would not be there anymore. Long time ago. Few people understood, in the early 80s, how much the opening and the reforms are going to change a socialist country, and to create a new mixture of something which might be, from a political point of view, still too conservative and too authoritarian for certain tastes, but from the economic point of view, a real revolution. While the other socialist countries, in that very moment, late 80s and late 70s, early 80s, still were going on a very classical, orthodox, conservative line. China was earlier injected, given the wisdom of the decisions made by the group of leaders, especially by Deng Xiaoping, was injecting a vaccine against certain problems. But, the vaccine cannot solve every problem. Because of that, Tiananmen came. Tiananmen was the real symptom of how big the change is, how problematic were the implications. Opening the window and the mosquitoes came in. But you should open the windows. And once again, the opening is there. The Chinese did not roll back. That's something important for us. And now, again, they are facing choices. Because of that, I beg to differ a little bit from Honorable member of the Hong Kong's Legislative Council. The Chinese are still betting on the opening of reform. There is no way out of that initial option. But for a while, the problem is how we meet and support and encourage that option. And secondly, how much we have to help the fifth generation of leaders. I would say, given the amount of international exposure they had, the amount of new teachings they had, combined with the old good Confucian principle, Actually, if you read many of the new principles, People's First, And I recall that even a party in Taiwan is called People's First Party, But then, again, the Chinese leaders in Beijing have been very much compelled to look back into the textbooks of the classical leadership, because, as it was mentioned by our Chinese colleague in the panel, Confucianist teachings were for the leaders, for the ruler, for the gentleman, for the elite, for the ruling elite, which could make choices on behalf of the people. Then from this point of view, if you want, as dramatic changes, we have something else, yeah? A new moment of choice. And because of that, I believe, you know how much the most dramatic moment of Tiananmen started with the meeting between the Chinese leaders, which reluctantly, but finally had to decide to squarely meet and confront, meet in a direct discussion, the students, the representative of the students in the square. Yeah. And that was dramatic. Yeah? You can go over those tape records again and again to see how much it was difficult to communicate. Today, there are more ways, better ways to communicate, including with the word.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. All right, we only have a few more questions.
Yeah, it's also a follow-up question about something you said upstairs about a division of labor between China, who at the moment is providing capital and labor, the US who is providing consumption, and Europe who is providing technology. And you also mentioned how this is changing, how China might not be satisfied with only providing labor and capital in the future. What do you think will happen with the relationship between these countries when the division of labor crumbles? And who is going to take over the labor and the capital? And where will that stop? Because it seems to be a cycle that when you've developed, you abandon the labor-intensive industries. And who's going to take over? And yeah, thank you.
No, I believe all the three members of this G3 is not formalized. It's just for the sake of having, let's say, sort of a unified understanding, common understanding of the necessity among the three players, yeah, to jointly try to face the challenges. Then it's received conventional wisdom about that kind of division of labor. It's once again, it's yesterday's picture, already vintage picture if you want, yeah? Because the things are moving so fast, and I just picked up one very fast development. China, it will very soon become also, like the EU, generator of new developments in of technology, innovation, yeah? Advancement in many ways. And one challenge in that respect already met gradually, initially, incipiently by the Chinese, is to create new, more efficient technologies in energy production. Yeah? And then if today most of, or some of the European companies there, including German, have to criticize the Chinese companies copying too much and not fully respecting the IPR, the day after tomorrow will be the other side, the Chinese, which will incriminate and sue the partner companies from across the world for copying what the Chinese invented and created in terms of, once again, energy. That would be the field in which. And secondly might be communication, internet, new generation, yeah? Already there is a Chinese company which sued Motorola for patent license problems. But once again, that would be in 20 and 30 years already a new division of labor. About what mentioned in terms of military power, everybody agreed that the military solutions are not anymore not acceptable and not that efficient, yeah? Should be coupled at least or gradually replaced by political, diplomatic solution. And that's where we are trying to do, because I've said our service, it's focused on three of the splendid experience existing in Europe in terms of traditional diplomacy, yeah, crisis management, and we had plenty, two world wars plus after, and including the Cold War and the 2 world wars, yeah. And finally, development assistance. Still the EU being the biggest world donor in terms of development assistance. Japan used to be, but then going through certain stages of economic evolution, then that policy was changed, slightly adjusted. But once again, we have expertise in that respect. And then this expertise also should be projected in seeking for a new division of labor or division of roles. But once again, what should be done, it's first of all to take into account the fast-changing realities. Secondly, to acknowledge the genuine differences in terms of comparative advantages. You are blessed with certain things and skills, yeah? I don't have in terms of resources, and I will acknowledge that, and the mutual recognition of how we have to narrow the gap in thinking and management, in addressing certain issues, and finally, together, trying the best formula in representing, yeah, part of the solution for each other's problems. That's the direction in which we'll have to evolve together. But that's not for tomorrow. It's for the next half a century. But what it's good now, and that includes the discussions here in these days, should be a more active exploration of how should that be done, with the younger ones who tomorrow will take up the responsibility of making choices and decisions, and with the others representing certain interests in terms of sectorial interests and so on.
Thank you. So our final question is MEP in the panel discussion, MEP Mr. Diva, he said that Europe's role as brokering a partnership between China and the US, as they both lack experience of sharing power. How do you see Europe's role in doing this? How do you see the future of their role?
I would say that that was a very generous idea, and which reflects once again the role the Parliament has in this respect, to have a political guidance on the future direction of the way in which the EU can find itself a proper role, to make good use of its experience, its role, its background, as a soft power. But again, it's something which will should be taken by all the others, not only by the Parliament. Parliament is having a certain political role to play, but secondly, it should be done by everyone, by the business leaders, because very much it's not. It's let me say, I understand it as an implicit and an explicit process of how to broker this power sharing. Something, I would say, it started already naturally. In many ways, given the excellent backgrounds of more than 2 decades of industrial cooperation, technological cooperation between these major players, the American companies, the tens of thousands of the European companies who already in the last more than 2 decades adventured to the Chinese markets. And now the Chinese coming and joining this economic cooperation in various regions of the world. Already there is, incipiently, but already visible, once again, a certain division of labor and roles and power. In many ways, certain German technologies, including the high-speed trains and so on, many others, car-making technologies, if you want. Volkswagen, I remember the first model in Shanghai, which was a very modest one. Look at the most recent models and look the way in which they inspired the Chinese to create their own brands in car making and many other ways, including in fashion design and so on. Then again, initially, for example, in shipbuilding, the Japanese were the strongest in the world. Of course, initially the Britons, then the Germans also, and many others, But now, immediately in the 670s, the 6th decade, 7th decade, the Japanese suddenly became very strong. And then the South Koreans took over, and now the Chinese are taking over, Then the power sharing, the division of labor in the world goes in a way in which nobody can make clear and, definite decision. You do that, and I'll do the rest, But on verticalization, which started with a certain division of labor, later on in the globalization process, it was the de-verticalization of the power. And now that's happening in political, maybe in military too, and also in the political fields, The reforms being expected for the financial institutions, international financial institutions, it's part of this process. And again, in economy, clearly, while we have to get credit from China for the excellent contribution of the EU in modernization, industrialization in the last 3 decades of China, and that should include also what the Japan did, United States, in bringing new technologies to China. To the same extent, we have next 30, 40 years to share this power in industrial field, but again in the political field. China, of course, was always, is there as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. But how much the reforms over there in enhancing representativity and having new roles for everybody, including new players of the international arena in reforming United Nations itself and the Security Council, how much China, United States, and now EU is an observer since months ago, should discuss this in an open-minded way. That's a good problem. G20, very soon, is going to discuss this reform of the international financial institutions. But once again, I said about being an explicit process and an implicit one. Then the power sharing not will come necessarily just because the current or the future President of the United States will come out of the White House and to the whole journalists being there, and I wish you to be at that moment, you all to witness that, will say, look, we decided to give to China more role to play in the PKOs, in the peacekeeping operations. We decided China will have a stronger representation in the World Bank, for example. That's already going. China is there in the PKOs, it would be there in G20 and in the World Bank, in many other institutions. But again, how many air carriers will be on the seas? That would be something which, it would be a certain balance, certain discussions. The Pentagon will keep issuing reports about the new Chinese military developments, and given signals, the Chinese will reply and trying to understand the worries in the neighborhood, since Southeast Asia was mentioned, and some other regions which are witnessing certain challenges, that in this respect, for sure, China will be invited to share responsibilities. You know the well-discussed theory about taking up certain responsibilities as a responsible member of the international community. That will happen. But again, first, it should be accepted. Secondly, they will have to learn. They are on learning curve. The future generation of Chinese leaders will have a greater exposure of the international engagements, and they will have to leap out of that. And besides, it's very simple. You know how many more Chinese are going abroad. And the Chinese government cannot control everything, because the businesses are going out because they have money, increasingly they have experience, and they are now requiring the Chinese governments to protect their interests, their money, their operations, their projects, their investments. And then you go to Beijing and see how big is the new consular section, the new consular office building of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It equals the whole building in itself. The other one, which is the headquarters. It's modern, equipped with the last cry in terms of in technologies. But once again, that shows how much now they have to answer to the expectations and the needs of their own people, and trying to be more internationally committed. And that will include that part of the power sharing in which, if necessary, they will have to intervene. It happened in Libya to evacuate the people, and they've shown that they have airplanes, to do the job properly. When they launched in space, already, a number of important flights, manned flights, they shown that they have an international network able to keep communications, control, and the world suddenly discovered that China is a space power.
I think that's probably
nobody granted that, saying, look, from tomorrow you'll start to be a space power. Take care of, do it properly. But they will have to do it. And now they proved. They had ships communicating with the spaceship on the oceans. They had in many places in China, monitoring stations and so on. Then they showed suddenly that they are everywhere if needed. And that's something to properly be understood. And the European Union is doing that. It invited China to join Galileo project. And our space cooperation is going to be more substantial. We are preparing that for the future high-level discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you very much for being here, and we all learned a lot.
You are too generous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was a good experience for me too.
We hope so.
Absolutely.